It's my opinion that the dark arts of spin and PR actually helped Mohammed Al-Fayed evade justice. So I invited Phil Craig onto the show to discuss this with me and delve a little deeper. Phil brings a lot of knowledge and experience to the table as a serious journalist and also as an award-winning senior producer on many international documentaries. He's seen a fair bit of spin in his day, and he's debunked a fair bit too.
Testimony to the bravery of some of these women, that some of them, and they were very kind of junior members of staff, they spoke out 20 or 30 years ago about this. They tried to get their stories told. They tried to talk to the police. And it just kind of disappeared into this kind of miasma of, buck passing, we're not sure, there are other women who've said different things. And yeah, it's a disgrace. It really is. It's shameful, I think, for the country, for the police, for the prosecutors. There's another little scandal that's broken in Britain. You may not have heard about it, about a man called Niven, who ran a chauffeur car company, servicing the BBC. And I remember when I worked at the BBC, a Niven car at the end of a long day or a long night at the bar, a Niven car on expenses was like the ultimate treat.
Yeah. And
those Niven drivers, they were full of gossip. Oh, you'll never guess what went on in the back of the car the other night, so-and-so and so-and-so. And it turned out, and this was only revealed a few months ago, that Niven and many of his drivers had criminal records for sexual offences, including paedophilia.
Oh, yeah.
So picture the scene.
Wow.
All of this. So it's just like the culture at the time was kind of permissive. Anything goes. Oh, they get up to all sorts in the back of my cab, and it's kind of like, I wouldn't say treated as a joke, but it's a kind of permissive culture. And within that culture, the real predators, the really nasty predators like Savile can operate. And then when somebody says, oh, this happened to me in this dressing room, or this happened to me in this taxi, people say, well, like I said earlier, let it all hang out. Don't be a square. This is how we are. Even though it was probably illegal then and would certainly be illegal now. I'm not making a great deal of sense, but I think there was a culture of permissiveness and making light of these things before Me Too that allowed not only kind of harmless misbehavior to happen, but some very harmful predatory behavior to happen and not to be judged and to be enabled. I think it was a cultural thing. I hope that's changed.
Well, I think that was a form of defence too, because if they can minimise it and act like it's nothing really that important, well, it's a way of sort of hiding, isn't it?
What it is.
Yeah. One thing I think we're bringing up that is really relevant, though, is that there has been a bit of dismissiveness about the women that are coming forward with their claims. People are saying, it's the typical office culture of the time and it's just a dirty old man chasing women around the desk.
Exactly.
But I think it's important to emphasise that we don't think that, and that we are also drawing attention to it because there were serious allegations, and that's what we're drawing attention to. And it doesn't take much research to be able to pick up, that there were, like you said, he was questioned under caution due to rape allegations.
Twice.
In 2008, I think, and the last one was in 2013. So on the record, there were serious allegations.
Wonderful interview with Germaine GREER, during which time we demolished about 3 bottles of red wine. And she spoke about, here's kind of Australia's leading feminist talking about what she thought of watching Skippy when she was growing up.
We all watched Skippy when we were growing up. For those that don't know, that might be in the USA and maybe don't know what Skippy is, Skippy was really the hero of the hour. It was a kangaroo that could do extraordinary feats. You used to say, Skippy, we need you to go and get a helicopter.
That's
and
right.
Get a rescue crew to come and rescue this person out of a canyon, and off he'd go.
And Germaine GREER, who was very funny about some of the attitudes that underpinned it, because some of the roles given to the women, like the women are always getting lost and they can't read maps and they can't park, and they're airheads and they're just there to make breakfast. So Germaine had a bit of fun with that, but she said, you know what, Phil? When I was a young woman in London making my way, I would put Skippy on and I would weep at the colour of the shapes of the trees, of the color of the sky. It was my connection with home, and I missed it so much. I thought it was so lovely.
That is lovely. Now, you were approached by ITV to make your docu-series drama. Well, actually, it wasn't a drama. It was a serious docu-series on Diana, Story of a Princess. Now, many people thought that that wasn't worth serious analysis. And the late and great Christopher Hitchens was one of those. And I believe that he expressed those views to you at a lunch you had together. Would you like to tell us about that?
I think it's possibly the hardest thing, harder than some of the really tough, international political and terrorist subjects, because getting anywhere near the truth on a story like that, which has been so phenomenally politicized, exaggerated, warring camps and books and documentaries and interviews, all of which were incredibly one-sided. His story, her story, the War of the Walesers, as it was called. I found that so challenging. And yeah, Christopher Hitchens was actually in the film because he'd met Diana several times, and he's always worth listening to on subjects like this. But he was one of many who sort of rolled his eyes and said, "Oh, you shouldn't waste your time on a story like this." And I'm like, no, I think it's important. I think it's really important to try, royal biography, heads of state. Affects our culture, affects the way we feel about our own families. It affects the morale of a nation, perhaps even more than a nation. And people were just genuinely fascinated. And there had been so much propaganda. And I really think that if that book and that series did anything, it was to interrogate some of the stories you thought you knew. If you'd read Morton, or if you'd read Dimbleby, or if you'd seen the Bashir interview, all three of those, and they're the three big ones that people really know about, that fixed certain things in the popular imagination about Diana and Charles and the marriage and everything. And all of them, to a greater or lesser extent, were hugely spun and exaggerated.
I think that's probably the role good journalism plays, because it does present both sides of the argument.
I couldn't agree more. And Andrew and I talk about this a lot in our podcast, Scandal Mongers, because groupthink is such a pernicious force. And it can affect people from all sides of politics. You just get into, because somebody is in the other camp, they must be wrong about everything. She came down to this lovely country house hotel in Devon where we were filming with James and his mother. And we all spent the night. And we sat up with the owner playing Trivial Pursuits and drinking extremely expensive Calvados till the early hours. And at one point, Francis says, "James, you're cheating. You're cheating." He said, he sort of leant forward to her with a bit of a leer. He said, "Well, of course I am, my dear. I am a cad, didn't you know?" It's like hard to resist, I think, that level.
Did Frances fall in love with him a little bit?
I don't know. I think she understood why other women might.
While we're talking about Frances, you have brought her up several times, and I think you want to tell us more. How did you meet?
Oh, we were university romance betters, 19-year-olds at college in Cambridge, and been together ever since.
Wow.
I'm
That's
very
amazing.
lucky man.
So you were at Cambridge and you studied history.
Yes.
And I read on your CV that you actually fly. You fly?
Yes, I went. Well, I don't fly anymore, but when I started at university, I was in the University Air Squadron. So I was sort of a cadet pilot in the RAF.
Were you? Wow, that's amazing. And where did you go when you left Cambridge? What was your first job?
Well, I did have the chance to go into the RAF, actually, because of the training I'd had. I got my wings and everything, so I could fly planes. But I also applied to the BBC, and I got one of their traineeships. So it was quite a decision. Which moribund British institution do I join, the BBC or the RAF?
I wanted to talk to you. I wanted to pick your brain because you very kindly left a very nice comment on my last Gossip Before Bed saying that I wasn't a dinosaur. And I appreciated that because, Phil, I got to tell you, I feel like I've gone to sleep, had a nightmare and woken up sort of on the side of the debate I never expected to be on. Back in 2013, when Julia Gillard became our Prime Minister, I was cheering the fact that we had our first female Prime Minister. Mm-hmm. When she added the gender identity section to the Sexual Discrimination Act, I was thinking, great. fantastic, because, you know, working in this industry and me as a singer, you have a lot of friends that are gay and that you support and love. And so I'm thinking, well, that's great. Everything's going in the right direction. And it never occurred to me that there would be a downside. And the downside has hit me in the face. And that's what I want to discuss with you today.
Malcolm started getting involved with the LGBT Alliance, which was a group formed between lesbian and gay people who were concerned about the more extreme end, if you like, of the trans agenda. They were dismissed as a hate group. They were vilified online. They were not allowed to go to most political conferences. Now, this was 4 or 5 years ago. It's all changed now. Even though some of the leading lights of, you know, the old British gay and lesbian campaign joined their movement, the Mermaids, who I mentioned, took them to court, tried to have them banned from being a charity because he said they were a hate group, and they won that battle. And they also were a big part of blowing the whistle on the Tavistock, and so therefore connected to Hannah Barnes's book. It was funny. Malcolm was working. I think it was Malcolm's last boss in television. If you're listening to this, Malcolm, I forgive you for all those missed rough cuts. And all the times you said you needed a couple more days, and then I'd open Twitter and you'd written a 47-tweet thread. I thought, hang on a minute, where are this guy's priorities? But no, he is forgiven because he was brave. He was brave because to say those things 4 or 5 years ago was to risk career suicide.